Hi. Let's talk about March. March was an excellent reading month for me. I read 12 books. All of the 10 books on my TBR for March, bar one. I decided not to read The Silmarillion, which was my fantasy pick for March, because I decided I'm going to have like a Tolkien month. I'm thinking that in November or December, or maybe both, I'm going to read all of Tolkien. The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, but also his lesser-known work, like The Fall of Gondolin, I think it's called, and the other books. I have a couple of his works that are not as famous, and there are a couple of more I think I want to get my hands on. I'm trying to find them in this edition, but I haven't had any luck so far. And I also know that they published some letters that he wrote, and I would also like to just read his biography, find a good biography of him. So that's why I decided to wait with the Silmarillion and just kind of do my own little project at the end of the month. The Lord of the Rings, kind of the trilogy and The Hobbit are very much a Christmas movies to me. I think that's because when they were originally published, I would go to see them at Christmas. Usually, I think they would have been published around mid-December, and I would very often, I think for all of the three of the Lord of the Rings movies, I went to see them on like the Boxing Day, like second day of Christmas, 26th of December or something like that. And they would be in the theater in cinema in my hometown. And the same thing with the Hobbit, except that I think the first movie I saw in my hometown, and the second movie I went to a cinema. I was living in Oslo, and the third movie I actually saw when I was living in New Zealand, which was very, very fun because they had like a separate, like a different type of introduction to the movie with like the cast thanking New Zealand because obviously they were filmed there. So that was very, very fun to see. But yeah, so I'm gonna do some sort of a Tolkien project at the end of the year. I'm hoping that I will get to it at the end of the year. So I always watch almost always watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy at Christmas. So it would fit perfectly. Excuse me and my, cheers. Nothing as good with a bad cough as some whiskey. Anyway, so March was a really good month, as I said. I read the 12 books. I mean, they were not all very long, for sure, but I did enjoy most of the books. There was one book that I really did not enjoy, but the rest of them I really enjoyed. So it was a very good reading month. And I'm quite surprised. I'm a little bit surprised that I managed to read 12 books because the last 5 days of the month I traveled back home for Easter, and I'm gonna show you here some clips. I come from a small town in the northwest of Iceland called Ísafjörður, and I went straight to play with my brass band. I play the tuba in this rock festival that we have every Easter. This was the 20th anniversary of the rock festival. So we went there and we were like playing in front of full house of people. I spent time with my niece's cute little puppy, Churro. Oh my God, he is so, just like, oh my God. There was just so much snow, and there is still so much snow back there. Got to spend time with my other niece's dog, Dimma, and just, enjoyed time in the snow. It was actually bad. Weather wasn't good enough for me to go skiing, We went also for a nice little walk, and the guy there in the yellow jacket, it's the president of Iceland, just so you know. Yeah, we went for a lovely walk there with a group of people, horrible weather, played with the puppy again, spent time with my niece's cat. He's so cute. He's Loki. One of them, they have 3. And just had an adventure coming back home through the mountain. There were really bad weather, but made it home safe and sound, and had a lovely Easter. Let's go into the books I read in March. The first book I read in March, I read on the 1st of March. And it took me like half an hour or something. It's 85 pages. It's by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She is a Nigerian author and is an excellent author who has, some excellent novels out there. This is a very short memoir of hers that she wrote after she lost her father. So it was published in 2021. Like I said, he died, and it was like during COVID and all the pandemic things. And it's just a beautiful little book about her going through grief and how it was for her. And it's just really good kind of exploration of also the social conventions surrounding grief. It was very interesting to read some of the Nigerian or the, what is it? Ubu. I will put it on the screen, the tribe that she's from, and what is expected of the widow, and it was just very interesting. But it was also just good for me to read as a person who is currently going through grief after we lost a loved one in my family. So it's just, I don't know. I thought it was just very cathartic. It made me, I cried like a baby reading it, and it was just a very good thing. It like cleansed you out a little bit. So definitely would recommend this book if you're going through grief, or if you know someone. It's very good. Initially I gave it 4 stars, but I'm like, I don't know how do you rate a book like this? So I'm changing it, and I'm actually gonna give it 5 stars, because it was just exactly what I needed when I read it. The second book I read in March was The Child of Nature by Halldór Laxness, who is an Icelandic author, Nobel laureate, and this is his first novel that he published, was published in 1918 when he was 16 years old. And it's really fun to read a book by such an accomplished author. I mean, if you win the Nobel Prize in literature, I think everybody will agree that you are pretty good, right, at your craft. But this one is obviously a beginner writer, so it's really good to read, to just kind of understand that good writers are not necessarily born; they are made because they practice, right? Anyway. So this is a very interesting story. It's and I actually love the introduction to this, because this is, I think, a second edition. It was first published in 1918, like I said, but then there's a third edition, which was published in 69 or something. No, 64. So several years, decades after it was first published. And the introduction is so funny, where the author, Halldór, is basically saying that, like, because the title of the book is Child of Nature, a love story. And he's just like, why would I put that it's a love story? I mean, you can obviously see with the writing that the author is barely past puberty. What does he know about love? Talking about himself. Like, it was obviously a publicity stunt. So that's funny. And he's also saying that there are so many grammatical errors in the first edition. Like, what was I thinking? But then again, what can you expect from a 16-year-old lad who should be paying attention to his lessons at school, but instead is writing a novel, So he's He's actually quite hilarious, this author, in his own way, for sure. But this is an interesting love story, like I said, an interesting story. It is a love story. So the child of nature is this young girl, Hulda, and she meets this man and then another man, and so there's a love triangle, and there's like, should I elope or like leave home and go travel the world? But then like there's a war going on. Obviously this is written during the First World War, so maybe we can't go travel the world, and and then she actually just decides, no, I don't want to travel the world, I want to stay, home is where the heart is, but home is actually here in Iceland. I don't need to go. The grass isn't greener. I think that's kind of the message of the book, that the grass isn't greener. Just stay at home, people. And there are some dark themes here. There's like suicide, parental neglect, alcoholism. So there are a lot of things going on in this book. And I thought it was really interesting. I'm very happy to have read it. But it's not really excellent. So it's a 3-star read for me. Okay, but nothing really more than that. The next book I read was an audiobook. It was a non-fiction called Sleepwalkers by Christopher Clark, published in 2020. It was narrated by Derek Perkins, and it was 23 hours, 57 minutes. So this book, I'm sorry, I do have notes here on my laptop. I don't remember things, so I need to have notes. So if I'm looking away, it's because of that. Anyway, so this is a very interesting history of what led to the First World War. And there were so many things in there that I didn't really know about. How strong the Serbian connection was, and all the history within Serbia and the Balkans. And there basically was the first Balkan War, which I don't think I realized just how deep the conflict was in the Balkans, even prior to Yugoslavia breaking up in the 1990s. Anyway, so that was interesting to me. And also like the Ottoman Empire and the role that one played, both in like Eastern and Southern Europe, but also in North Africa, and like the things that were going on in North Africa between France and Germany and England, and how really the originator of the conflict wasn't really Germany. They were not the aggressor, at least not in the beginning. So anyway, it was very interesting, and a lot of things that I didn't know about, for sure. Now, I cannot judge this book on whether it's academically well-founded research. It felt like that. It felt very well-rounded, and the arguments were quite strong, and the narration, the storytelling was fine. For the most part, at least, the storytelling was fine. Maybe because this is not a time period in history that is super fascinating to me. I'm fascinated with early modern history, but wars in general are not necessarily something I find very interesting. So I found that I was listening to it at double speed, which I never do with audiobooks unless they are just not good. Or in nonfiction sometimes, if it's not necessarily something that I'm, is fascinating me. So, but it was very long, almost 24 hours. So, it was fine. I'm happy that I listened to it. I learned a lot of many things, but I am giving it 3 stars because it wasn't really gripping. The next book that I listened to as an audiobook, If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura, published in 2018. So this was translated by Eric Selland, so I read it in English, or listened to it on audiobook, narrated by Brian Nisi. It's a short book, as you can see, 4 hours, 49 minutes. But immediately after I finished it, I went and I bought it. And there is a review of this book, the video before this one. So I had planned on filming this video, my March wrap-up, 2 weeks ago, really. But I couldn't make it before I had traveled to Dublin and then or to Ireland. And then when I came back, I was sick with the plague, hence the whiskey. And I haven't been able to, finally I'm feeling better so I can actually fix this video. But usually I would prefer to do my wrap-ups and then have my reviews come like subsequently every Monday after that. But so maybe you will have seen, so you know, this is old news for you. But anyway, I love this book. I mean, look, it's a cat, a kitty cat. It's so good. It's an excellent book about connections, human connections, and what it is that makes human connections possible, and about love, and about just forgiveness and grief, but also hope. It is such a good book. It is just such a book. Such a book. Anyway, it's really good. So I'm giving it 5 stars because I really loved it. And I can see myself reading this book again and again and again and again because I really enjoy it. And it's just very short and easy to read and very good. My precious, my precious. Middlemarch by George Eliot. Oh my God, this book is so good. I have a review again already published on my channel. So this was, I mainly listened to it as an audiobook narrated by Juliet Stevenson, who is a brilliant audiobook narrator. So it's a chunker. So this edition, my Wordsworth Classic edition, is 688 pages minus the like notes and whatever. It's 35 hours, 38 minutes long. It took me forever, but it was worth it, man. Oh my God. So I read this as a read-along with Classics and Company here on YouTube. Unfortunately, I was not able to watch the live show at the end of the month because it was on Easter. And as you saw in the beginning of this video, Easter is a family thing here in Iceland, or in my family at least. You could probably compare it to Thanksgiving in the US. So people tend to travel to spend time with their families. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I still loved it. And I've been loving watching there have been few people publishing videos about it. So it's been really fun watching that. But this is just such a fantastic book. Oh my God. Like, I can't believe there are people who don't like this book. Like, what's wrong with you people? Like, oh my God, I loved it. You know, it's not perfect, of course, but it's so good. And I just loved it so much. But go watch my video on it. I video recorded myself, like some reactions throughout while I was reading it. And then a very long review because I had so much to say about it. It's amazing. 5 stars. The next book is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. So this one was published in 1890, so it's an old book. And I listened to it mostly as an audiobook, but I did the same as with Middlemarch. It was kind of a hybrid type of a thing. So I also took part in a read-along with this, but I was not, again, able to watch the live show at the end because it was Easter. But I think there's a recording available of it, but I haven't been able to watch it yet, but hopefully I will be able to do that at some point. Anyway, I have been considering doing a review of this book, but I'm not sure because I feel like this is a type of book that I can't just tell you how I feel about it. I need to actually do some research into it. I don't know. We'll see if I find the time to do that. But I think that would be actually very interesting. So this is the 3rd time that I read this book. The first time I read it in college. A few years ago, I listened to it narrated by Stephen Fry. Oh, that was sublime. And this time around, I had actually found a narration by Michael Sheen, who's a fantastic actor, one of my favorites. But then when I was gonna start to listen to it, I noticed that it was just like 2-something hours. So it was an abridged version. I was very annoyed because I did not want to listen to an abridged version. So I found a narration by Jerry O'Brien, which was okay. There are like so many narrators of this book. And that one was the one that I liked the most, but still it wasn't Michael Sheen, and definitely wasn't Stephen Fry. So poor guy definitely suffered by comparison. But it was fine, like I got through it for sure, and I also did read a couple of chapters as well. Anyway, this book is just filled with horrible characters that nobody likes. But I still loved it. I mean, I really enjoyed this book. I don't know what to tell you. It's just, some people are saying that they are disappointed because it's not a horror book, and I don't know. I have never heard of it being marketed as a horror. I mean, it is quite horrible for sure, like everything that's happening and Mr. Grey's behavior and whatever. But it's more of a gothic mystery, something like that. I don't know. I'm not a critic. Anyway, I enjoyed it. It's just a good book about, vanity and being superficial, and that may not be what is important in life. I don't know. Cannot just be true to yourself. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the writing so much. I really think that I enjoy Oscar Wilde's writing, even though it's a little bit over the top or whatever. But I enjoyed this book. But I'm giving it 4 stars because I did not enjoy it as much as I did the last time around. But that was Stephen Fry, and a narrator can really, I think, influence how you are enjoying a book for sure. So, but it was okay. I'm happy I read it, and don't necessarily think that I need to read it again for the 4th time. Oh, this book. Good Omens. What is it called? Good Omens, The Nice and Accurate Prophecies of Agnes Notter, Witch, by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. There is a review coming up for this book as well. I think it will be published next Monday. Yeah, I think it's not up yet. This book is so good. 5 stars. It is hilarious. Hilarious. It's so funny. And it's so silly and just ridiculous. And like, you cannot take it seriously at all. It's just fun. But I loved it. And I actually watched the TV show after I read the book, the first season, and that one is just as hilarious. I mean, these characters, Michael Sheen, of course, and David Tennant, they are a Sephiroth, what are they called? Oh my God, I can never name it. And Crowley. They are just them, like, they are just them. I mean, they are just perfect. They are perfect. It's almost as if Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman had these two in mind when they were writing those characters. I mean, it is perfect. Perfection. But this book, if you haven't read it, you need to read it. It is so good. It is just so good. Okay, now we're coming to book number 9, and that was The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. So I have a project this year where I'm reading all of the 7 novels by the Bronte sisters, and I started with Charlotte Bronte, and this is the 3rd book of hers that I'm reading. And as you can see, I did some tapping and have some notes in there as well. I actually mostly listened to it as an audiobook, but because Charlotte seems to like French, There's a lot of French in this book. It does take place in Belgium, so, I can understand French, but it's annoying. But thankfully, in my Wordsworth Classics edition, there are French translations in the end here. So I would even sometimes when I would listen to it, if I was somewhere doing something and there were a lot of long French, paragraphs, basically, I would just pause it and just do whatever I do, and then I would go and listen to it with a book in hand so I could understand what was going on. Why do people do that? It's so annoying. Anyway, I can understand why. I just don't understand why they don't translate it in the audiobook. Why don't they just put like a note like, in the book, this is in French, and then say it in English? I don't understand that. It's something that annoys me extremely much. But anyway, so, interestingly, this book was published originally in 1857. This edition is 199 pages, so it's relatively long. The audiobooks was 9 hours, 27 minutes. And it was narrated by James Langton. He did a very good job with that. This is the first book that Charlotte actually wrote. She wrote this before Jane Eyre, but it was rejected. And even after Jane Eyre being very successful, it was again rejected. The publisher refused to publish it. And in the introduction of this edition, the author of the introduction, Sally Minogue, calls it a flawed novel. And she actually says, even in the wake of the startling success of Jane Eyre, and in spite of the wishes of the author, Smith, Elder & Co., the publishers, did not see fit to publish it. Perhaps this should tell us something. Yeah, this is not Charlotte Bronte's masterpiece, for sure. It falls so short of Jane Eyre and Shirley as well. It's... So I can definitely understand, and I agree that this is her worst. I haven't read Villette. I'm reading Villette now in April, but I haven't started yet. But I can understand why this is considered to be her worst work. There are just so many things that are just not good. So first of all, what I've enjoyed about this book is the discussions of the professor when he, his name is William, and he has problems with his family. Anyway, he ends up being an English teacher at I think it would be like an upper secondary type of school in Brussels in Belgium. And he's teaching them English, obviously, and the teachers there are called professors. Anyway, so, which hence the title. So his discussion on pedagogy and how he teaches and how he likes to basically break his students before building them up is very interesting to me as a teacher, and very grateful that the practices that are presented in this book are now no longer considered to be good practice within education. Let's just say it's very interesting. But I really enjoyed reading that kind of historical fact about the profession of teachers. But this book, I feel like Charlotte was writing her fantasy world. If only she could, have enough money. If only she could marry an understandable man. If only, she could have a lovely child. If only she could live this lovely life where everything would be fine as long as she had, if only she had money. It's like it's like when you were a teenager and you would dream of your future type of a book. It's actually quite sad because I know that's not how Charlotte Bronte's life was. It was full of disappointment. This book is not full of disappointment. So, in regards to their lives. Anyway, so I'm very happy that I read it. I didn't dislike it, so I'm giving 3 stars. It was interesting and kind of gave me an insight into Charlotte Bronte's, both how she writes, but also I think maybe how she was thinking and what her life, which is very interesting to me because I'm fascinated by these sisters for sure. So the thing that I dislike the most about this book is actually the cover of this Wordsworth Classics edition. Like, what? Anyway, 3 stars. Okay. I'm gonna try to move it along. My 10th book was Perfect People by Peter James. This book was an audiobook narrated by Claire Corbett, 13 hours, 55 minutes, and it was published in 2011. So, this is a thriller, psychological thriller, I would probably categorize it as, but I really did not like this book. I love Peter James. I have read, I think, most of his books, or at least his series that take place in, several of his standalones as well, but his favorite is definitely his series with Detective Superintendent Roy. I love those books, and I know that they've been made into a TV series as well, and I love his writing, I love his character building, but this book, yeah, I almost DNF'd it several times, and I ended up listening to it at almost double speed, which, as I said before, I never do. If I have to listen to an audiobook on double speed, it's almost always on, or not necessarily double, maybe 1.5 or something. If I listen to audiobooks like that, it's usually non-fiction that don't grab me, but I still kind of want to know what they're about. But if it's fiction, that's to me is a DNF. But I don't know. Okay, there was something in that hooked me, so I wanted to know how it ended. So I sped it up. But I think the problem with this book were the 2 main characters, the husband and wife. So they had lost a child at 5. I think the child was 5 when their son, died from a very horrible illness. And so they go through biological engineering, genetical engineering type of a thing in order to have another child that doesn't have that disease. It's a genetical disease, which both of them together make the chance of a second child having that same disease as the first child is very high unless they do some genetical manipulations, right? And so it's about them going to this clinic, whatever, and doing that. But I don't want to say too much. But then again, I don't recommend this book. It's really bad. These characters, I was just many times thinking, why even are you having children? You shouldn't be parents. You are horrible people. I could not even feel empathy for them. First of all, for having lost a child, which I cannot even imagine how painful that must be. Or for them really wanting to have a child and not but being afraid to do that naturally because of this disease. So, but they were just so unlikable characters. I hated them. I just hated them. Yeah. So, it was just very far-fetched, all the talk about genetical manipulations. It was just all very unfeasible. Most people don't want to do that. Come on. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, so, but like I said, there was a hook, which obviously made me want to know how it ended. I'm not going to say anymore, but I gave it 2 stars because of the hook, basically. But I did not like this book at all. Now we come to a much better book, which is Galatea by Madeline Miller. So this is a short story. It was only 46 minutes. I listened to it narrated by Ruth Wilson. And this one was published in 2013. And it is the story of Galatea, who from Greek myth was carved from stone, and the goddess, I don't remember which goddess, like made her come alive. So she became the perfect wife for her husband. But of course the story is so much deeper than that, and this one is so beautiful, and it's just the themes are obviously very serious, like with domestic abuse and gender-based abuse and possibly child abuse. I mean, it's very heavy, like the themes. But I just listened to it, like I just sat there listening to it for like 46 minutes. Because it's so good. Madeline Miller's writing is so good. And I cannot wait. This is why I wanted to read Circe at Easter, because I listened to this book just before Easter, and I wanted to bring Circe with me to read, but I couldn't. I didn't want to read it when I wasn't able to pay attention, because I really enjoy Madeline Miller's writing. So I'm giving this 5 stars because it was just that good. And then the last book that I read was also not on my TPR. So Galatea was not on my TPR, and neither was the 12th book, which is also an audiobook. It is Herr Arne's Hoard, also known as The Treasure, by Selma Lagerlöf, who was a Swedish author. She was actually, so this book was published in 1904, and Selma Lagerlöf was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1909, I think. Yeah. And she was also the first woman to become member of the Nobel Prize Academy. She wrote a lot of books, and was a very interesting woman. She was, Swedish. So this book was rather short. It was 2 hours, 37 minutes. And it was narrated by Lars Rolander. It was so funny. I don't know. I forgot to look it up, but it was probably an old narration because it felt very old-fashioned, but it was so much fun listening to him narrate this book in English with his Swedish accent. But that was also fun because then the Swedish names were like really Swedish. So I really enjoyed that. But it's set in the 16th century, so it's actually a historical fiction. And it tells the story of a group of Scottish mercenaries that escape from prison. They go on to murder a family of a Swedish farmer and his family and some of his servants in order to steal this man's treasure chest, hence the name, his hoard or his treasure. One of these mercenaries falls in love with the sole survivor of the family. I think she was a niece to the farmer who worked there as a maid. And anyway, things happen. It's a very interesting story. It is really a beautiful love story there, but it's also a story about kind of doing the right thing and being ethical and, justice being served, and there are ghosts in it. It's a very interesting book, and I would recommend you to, if you're interested in reading books by Nobel Prize winners, this is definitely a book that I would recommend. Would I necessarily recommend it like on a broad scale? I mean, if you're interested in these classics and old stories, it's definitely old and old-fashioned, so I'm not sure it necessarily appeals to everybody. So I'm giving it 3 stars because I enjoyed it, but I don't necessarily want to read it again, for sure. And I'm not sure that I necessarily want to read anything by Selma Lagerlöf. Please, if you know any of her like more famous books or more like books that have like high critical acclaim. If you know any of those, please put that in the comments below. I will maybe do some more research. But I do have a project of trying to read works by all of the Nobel Prize winners in literature, before my demise. But yeah, pretty good book, but not spectacular. So there's that. All the books I read in March. Yeah, it was an excellent month, and very happy with all the books that I read, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!